what was the thing that prompted your involvement in the civil rights movement?
My experience with poverty. My mother was a peasant. She was literate, but she wasn't academic. She was smart, she paid attention to things, but she was a single parent, much too young to have had children. She did things that were deeply creative within the community of poverty. She made the rent, the little money she got, work. And when it didn't work, we just moved in the middle of the night. So I lived in every neighborhood in New York, and mostly close to the proximity of the places where she had employment as a domestic. And in that context, I saw her under the bridge at the border of what is defined as the hall of the community. And women went there dressed in their best clothes to stand in a line. And white women or their chauffeurs or somebody on their domestic staff in these houses came down and looked through the group of recruits. And I watched her get work. I watched women get the job and wind up turning it over to their closest friend who needed it more than them. I saw poverty breed a generosity of spirit, of support, internal support. And then in that community came Marcus Garvey, and in that community came Du Bois, and in that community came Eleanor Roosevelt. I saw my future. I saw my place. And I tell a lot of people, you was talking about when as an artist did I become an activist? But that's wrong. You turned it around. I was an activist who became an artist.
Let's go back. Let's go way back. No, I'm just kidding. Just to when we met. Do you remember?
I'll never forget.
Yeah?
I had been pressed into yet another act of service for the NAACP Legal and Defense Fund. Came to LA, and then that was the moment my life started. I walked into the Beverly Hilton Hotel, and there I met a vision and a mouth and instructions that from that day until now have never yielded. But it makes the journey tolerable because Connie Rice is the one giving us the trajectory. She then began to lead me more deeply into the South Central LA, the groups, the young men she was working with. And through Connie, I then began to meet the different people in the police system as well as in the gang system that began to tell me their stories. The Advancement Project had both sides of the street talking.
That
Cops
we did.
who hated the gangsters who hated the cops like kids in a sandbox, except death was part of the payoff. Advancement Project appeared to be very well positioned to lead me into that system and to give me guidance and instruction, not just from learning the lore of the community and the streets, but I needed to know more about the rest of the system to try to get in rhythm with a new day, a new thought, a new approach, not just for what should be done to still the anguish of the community, but what to do with the police themselves, what to do with the law, the way these things were shaped.
So I was on a plane to Florida, to Tallahassee. This was after the acquittal of George Zimmerman. And then we had the opportunity to spend some time together with the Dream Defenders. An Advancement Project was there with our staff supporting the takeover of the state capitol. I listened to you have a conversation while we were there with Congressman John Lewis. And I remember you said, John, they're doing what we did. Tell me what you think, you know, the Dream Defenders and young people are doing now that was similar to what you were doing, and what else you think they need to be doing in this moment.
I've always felt that the radical change that's necessary resides with the young. It's not going to come out just out of academics. It's not going to come out of just a kind of an intellectual order. It has to come from a place that is deeply in touch with the pain that is experienced by the oppressed, because only they understand the extremes of the change that's necessary. You need to hear that voice. And it's simple. It's Rosa Parks sitting on a bus. It's as simple as that. I'm not leaving this bus until something changes. So I look to these places where the most unlikely resistance has evidenced itself, or less unlikely aspect of resistance reveals itself. I always say, now today when I talk to young people, they say, what are you looking for, Harry? I'm looking for my Rosa Parks moment.
The arc of civil rights over the last 50 years, where do you think we are now, and where should we be headed?
If you go back to the 60s, everything that Dr. King said challenged the status quo, challenged change. He constantly said, we got to change that, we have to change that, we have to change that. Well, what does change mean? Get something else. Doesn't mean get something as good as, it means get something better than what exists. We have to get more deeply into the communities. We have to make a bigger noise. We have to go back to bricklaying. And in doing that, as boring as some of it can be and as difficult, but I find that each brick that I put in place cannot be dislodged.